So topic for the day, mine is on the protein for sports and exercise, how these things help. Well, it's not moving. Okay. Then I will talk about the dietary protein and the protein recommendation and protein timing. Very important, yeah. When to eat, bukan not eating as we wish. If there is time, there is a protocol we have to follow, and the protein and exercise, and overall as a summary base. I declare there's no interest, and I'm giving particularly based on my findings and studies from other references that I will list out later on. And well, we are in COVID. We are not supposed to sit too long. Being in the Faculty of Sports Science, I would recommend you to walk and stand up during my presentation and elsewhere, others as well. Please do walk. This is my university. I have to promote. This is our special university. We have all over Malaysia. If you come to Malaysia, any state you go, or in Indonesia, they call province, you are welcome. And we have every campuses. If we come down to KL, to Kuala Lumpur Airport, it's just 45 minutes. Dr. Dadi will know. At that point in time, he was Dadi. Now he's Dr. Dadi. I'm so glad. That was my batchmate in the Southeast Asia Nutrition Leadership Program. And this is a leader. This is what we call a leader. He has achieved and he's moving up. I'm so glad to see him, and I'm being with him in the same platform today. This is my university. This is my faculty, where you all can see high achievers territory, because two of our students, one of my students went up to the Mount Everest. So I was doing the nutrition advice for them. So basically, protein is a very important nutrient. We cannot deny. Why? Because it can boost glycogen storage. We know it is not the carbohydrate storage. It helps the glycogen storage. Because if you don't use your if you finish your carbohydrate, then protein must come and fat must come to help assist. But if you have a proper nutrient intake, balanced diet, your glycogen storage will be boosted up. Reduce muscle soreness. Know the pain after the exercise or during exercise, it will be reduced. Promote muscle repair. This is very important for sports people, especially who are runners, hockey players, football players. All of us in this region, they are very strong in badminton, football, and also hockey. So we need to see how to take care. Protein, that doesn't mean you can eat as much you want. No, there is some advice and recommendation how to do it. So now lately, a lot of people also active, you know, they are not sports people. They are not going for competition and everything. So they need to know how is the protein portion in the meal. It's not taking at one time. You must spread it up throughout the day at certain portion. You cannot eat one whole meat only for the day. No, it has other nutrients to take as well. This is where the protein metabolism, very simple presentation in an infographic base from My Sports Science. It's a website from Esker, a professor in exercise physiology. So they talk about protein intake through the 20 amino acid that we have, essential amino acid and non-essential amino. That's a basic that we already know. And how the protein works in the stomach. After that, intestine. And then it goes to the liver. And then once it goes to the liver, it circulates to the heart. And then the last is the muscle. This is the flow that we are looking at, how a protein being metabolized step by step. So as I mentioned earlier, beginning itself, the protein can come from animal protein. They can come from plant protein. You will have a fantastic presentation, 3 presentations. We'll be talking about the plant-based, which is the soy-based, which is you will know more on that. I'm not going to touch that part, but I will talk an overall perspective. And I think Prof. Adin Shah also mentioned about some questions being surveyed that been asked on BCAA. This is very important for sports people. It comes from the essential amino acid, isoleucine, leucine, and lysine. So where we can get all these products and everything. Please, this is where we have to learn how to read the labels. That's very important. So in natural, unprocessed food, we have both animal and plant have the 20 amino acid. Quality of protein is very important. What type of protein that you are eating? So it's been measurement by the scores, PDCAAS scores. If you see a simple one, Google and find some data, they have how the higher the better are. So bovine cholesterol, casein, eggs, milk protein, whey. Look at it. All are animal-based and all dairy product. Many of them are dairy product. Whey is a dairy, milk protein is a dairy, casein comes from the dairy, bovine cholesterol is the first 2 days milk of the cows or the buffaloes. You get it cholesterol from there. And you see soy is the next to it. So look at it, animal-based, which is the beef, it's going down. So look, this is where we have to be very important. Science is very important to educate public and tell them, not eating meat, that means you get everything. No, you have to have a combination. Then only you get a very good deal. Holistic approach is always important. How much we do need is all based on the recommended. Maybe Indonesia have RDA, Malaysia we have RNI. So you follow which is your based on your age and body weight. It depends on the individual. It is not using US data or Australian data for yourself, but you calculate based on your age and your country's base. So please look at your RDA or RNI and then you refer back how much you should need for a normal people. Athlete, very difficult to get unless you work with the athlete group, sport dietitian or sport nutritionist to work for that. So protein, we got two types of exercise. We look at it, endurance type of exercise and resistance type exercise. So here, when you are doing endurance, the carbohydrate is the main fuel, not the protein. Protein, we use it for what? Restore the protein for use for energy. We just kept it. Promote synthesis of oxidative enzyme and mitochondria, which is release the energy. And it is also prevent the sport anemia. It is a very different anemia in sports. We do have some episodes. If you have time, please look on this area as well if you want to explore more. Because some athletics, especially athletics, they do have sports anemia. Very pseudo, but you have to do and check out because athletes do have some issues on iron intake as well if they are not taking proper. So in the other aspect on the metabolism, how endurance exercise, how is it from the liver, we have to supply to the blood and then goes to the muscle. So this is where the alanine, glucose-alanine cycle will come. This is the glucose-alanine cycle. So how a leucine helps and give you back to the energy. This is the cycle. This is the basic science in the for protein metabolism, especially in sports. And in the strength side, what they talk, exercise scientists, just recommend 1.5 to 1.8 gram per body weight. So this is based on body weight. Many of other things is based on grams or percentage, but in sports, mostly we will go by body weight because we want to base on individual. This is where the personalized nutrition is very important, and precision nutrition is very important. And this is where we tell them the athletes to do training. When they do training, they need more efficient protein so that they can have less dietary, so that they may need less protein dietary. If they don't take too much of it, they must make sure they eat proper balanced base. In muscle and strength, definitely you need protein. So to build up with exercise, so that doesn't mean you need extra protein. Carbohydrate provide the fuel. Remember that energy comes from carbohydrate, not from protein per se. So what will give you the protein sources? Some lean meats, fish, low-fat dairy products, eggs and egg whites. So this is all papers that you can go and look in the British Journal of Sport Medicine. They have mentioned how to build up muscle and strength. This is shown some examples: the meats, the milk, the nuts, the tempe. This will be taught later more and more. And most of the Indians in Malaysia, especially like myself, we don't eat tempeh much. It's not our culture. But when we go for a Malay function, definitely there is a tempeh. But they will make it in a Indian base, like a chili curry base and or goreng and fried, fried tempeh. Oh, fantastic! I tell you, that's only I eat in outside when I don't know how to cook for myself. But when I go to Indonesia, oh, this is one of my favorite food. Yeah, and I'm vegetarian, so it's very hard for me to get other food, but this is my favorite food. In Malaysia, they promote a lot of tofu as well. So this tofu is very important, high protein, and it's give you the benefit for you taking that part. So optimal protein sources, why we need to talk, we need high quality. And always high quality is referred to animal-based protein. But nevertheless, I show you the PDCAS, the protein amino acid score. Soy have a higher second ranking. So that shows that plant-based have a role to play. So don't worry about that much. But you must remember that protein is needed for maintenance, for repair, synthesis of the skeletal muscle. And milk-based protein, as I mentioned just now, you can see that we bovine cholesterol and casein, very milk-based. This is very important after the resistant exercise, when you weightlifting and everything. That's very important. And dairy protein seems to superior to other tested protein. This is common because we are encouraging people to take more on dairy product. Not that means chocolate, yeah? It is not chocolate. We are talking about milk-based, yeah? So, and don't think chocolate and go and wall up some chocolates and that's what will be giving you high sugar. But in milk, protein contained. So this is where the branch chain amino acid works, and that's where the energy release is happening there. So recommendation is a very important question. When you want to recommend, you must start to do a thorough nutritional assessment. Is the athlete needs nutrition goal for considering protein supplement or not? Why they need a protein supplement? Imagine, let's put a chess player or a lawn ball player. Do they need high protein? How much the protein they need compared to a weightlifter? So this is a question that we have to ask. So the nutritional assessment is a very important. And recommendation should be based on the conservative. Primarily for what? Optimizing the recovery. When you finish activity, wear and tear of your muscle, we need to recover. We have to come back to a normal position so that we can compete with the next game. So that is important. Adaptation to training, that's very important because training is a long period and then you go for competition. And these will all focus for strategies, improve and maintain your overall diet quality. So we want overall is a diet quality base. So in timing, I come back to the point of timing. So you must have a pre-exercise, what to take, what during exercise, what you can take, post-exercise. I'm sure Prof. Sulaeman will come and talk to you about Tempe juice, Tempe sport drinks. That is something that very exciting for me. I think this is our region. We should promote more. We're not supposed to be thinking about looking down and everything. No, I think this is a time for us to come up and show them what we have. There's plenty. Thailand maybe have something. Well, Malaysia maybe have something. And Indonesia definitely have something. So we have to come out with this kind of protein base that we can use it before, during, and after. So there is a position stand on this. International Society of Sport Nutrition. Well, in 2017, they come out. What they was talking about in pre-exercise, they have listed out. It's 20 pages. You can read it up in the references in the Google. And in the studies, what they suggest is combination. Pre means combination, not per se of protein, so that the muscle protein synthesis will be achieved at the maximum rate. But the protein amino acid feeding during this time, not clearly documented. This is just to understand, possible only, but not much document for increasing sports performance. No, only for muscle protein synthesis, not for performance base. So during exercise, injection of carbohydrate and protein or essential amino acid This is where BCAA can come in. Branch chain amino acid can come in, and with the combination of some carbohydrate, glucose inside, this will maintain a favorable anabolic hormone profile. And the performance, they need some endocrine system to work in a very systematically. Minimize the muscle damage, promote muscle growth, yeah? Promote muscle
Dr.
growth.
Mahenderan?
Yeah.
2 more minutes.
Okay, by finishing part. And then increase the time to exhaustion. And post-exercise, exactly, I already told you, is muscle for the glycogen recovery and also muscle damage markers. And this is the sedentary, what we recommend. This is a thing that we have shown here, many years we've been using. But lately, what they're trying to say is 0.3 gram high quality protein for body weight after exercise. And this should be spread out throughout the day and also prior to bed, before sleeping. And all these things can come from food source. So don't worry, don't need to take supplement. If you need to supplement, you must see. As I mentioned, vegetarian, don't worry, you get soybean, then you can think about, and also corn can give you a complement, combined with other plant-based. And this is their bone. People think if you take high protein, you will get an issue on the bone. Please, there's not much of evidence on that. So this is just to understand. Clinically, people say that, but there's no papers on that. That's even though they say the loss of calcium in the urine there. But if you take a proper diet, you won't get this issue. This is the calcium. If your calcium is adequate, no issues of the negative protein on the bone. And this is the impact of latest study, this year's paper, yeah? High protein diet for body composition, interesting data. But you must know this is to improve body composition. But this is not necessary if you are in a rightful body weight. This is for weight obesity problem people. And high protein, as I mentioned earlier, they said is will cause you a problem for kidney and longevity. No, there is, if you consider with care, with the for high risk people for kidney disease, for diabetic and everything, yes, that's a problem. But if you're normal people, I don't think so. If you properly maintain the diet. This is all the protein supplement available, many more outside there. There's no good food or bad food. It's only bad diet, practice or pattern. Athlete must be aware. There's no magic bullet, yeah? So summary, athlete can consume adequate amount of protein, and even with the low risk of protein energy, you must able to, there are no worries about athlete. They always take more protein base, and you must educate them to take animal protein, plant-based protein, if they have to take protein supplement, but they must know that most athletes can meet their protein needs from food alone. If they do planning properly, everything works. So supplementation does not take the place of the balanced diet. Consult nutritionists and dietitian for proper diet advice. And this is the references that I used. And see you in Malaysia for my sport medicine conference, and also for obesity conference next year in Malaysia 2021. With that, thank you very much.
Speaking about 4 topics today: cognitive function, skin health, liver fat, and I'll briefly talk about the protein leverage hypothesis. Now, I'm going to be spending most of my time talking about the first 2 topics, and because these topics involve soy isoflavones, I thought it'd be appropriate to provide a little background information about isoflavones, although I'm confident that many of you are familiar with this information, so I'll be rather brief. I actually entered this field about 30 years ago because of my interest in isoflavones and my belief that they provided a variety of different health benefits. And if you're interested in isoflavones, you're going to be interested in soybeans and soy foods, because among commonly consumed foods, soybeans are uniquely rich sources. And you can see this point illustrated on this next slide, where the average per capita intake in Japan among older individuals is about 30 to 50 milligrams per day. In contrast, in the US and in Europe, it's fewer than 3 milligrams per day. There are about 25 milligrams of isoflavones in a serving of a traditional soy food, such as a cup of soy milk or a half a cup of tofu. And you can come up with a pretty good estimate of the isoflavone content of a traditional soy food if you know the protein content of that food, because there are about 3.5 milligrams of isoflavones per gram of protein. Here we see the 3 isoflavones in soybeans. The predominant isoflavone is genistein, and it's the isoflavone that is thought to be most biologically active. On the right-hand part of the slide, you can see that the structure of isoflavones is fairly similar to the structure of 17-beta estradiol, estrogen, the female reproductive hormone. And because of the similarity in chemical structures, isoflavones are able to bind to estrogen receptors and to exert estrogen-like effects under certain experimental conditions. And for that reason, they are commonly referred to as phytoestrogens or plant estrogens. However, although they are classified as phytoestrogens, the isoflavones are very different from the hormone estrogen. And in fact, sometimes they have effects opposite to those of estrogen. And that's an easy concept to understand when you consider the case of cholesterol and phytosterols. Now, these two molecules are much more similar in chemical structure than our isoflavones and estrogen, and yet they actually have opposite physiological effects. Large amounts of dietary cholesterol will modestly increase blood cholesterol levels, whereas a couple of grams of phytosterols every day will lower blood cholesterol by as much as 10%. So you can see that small differences in chemical structure can result in large differences in physiological effects. And in fact, in addition to having effects opposite to those of estrogen, in some cases, in some tissues, isoflavones aren't going to have any effects at all, even though those tissues are affected by the hormone estrogen. And isoflavones may also have effects independent of their interaction with estrogen receptors. However, these estrogen-independent effects have been observed mostly in vitro and animal studies. So to summarize, isoflavones and estrogen have a similar chemical structure, but they differ at the molecular and at the clinical level. At the molecular level, isoflavones preferentially bind to and activate estrogen receptor beta in comparison with estrogen receptor alpha. And I'm going to come back to this point a little bit later on during the presentation. Now let's talk about cognitive function, which of course refers to mental abilities, learning, thinking, reasoning, remembering, problem solving, decision making, and attention. Cognitive function can deteriorate to the point where a condition referred to as dementia develops, which affects memory, thinking, orientation, learning capacity, language, and judgment. Now, unfortunately, it's estimated that about 50 million people throughout the world suffer from dementia. And it's important to emphasize that dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is a major cause of disability and dependency among older people worldwide. And it not only adversely impacts the individual with dementia, but also, of course, affects the caregiver and society at large from both a health and an economic perspective. I just want to emphasize the current prevalence of about 50 million people worldwide, because projections are that over the next 30 years or so, the number of people with dementia is expected to increase 2 to 3-fold, and most of that increase is going to occur in low and middle income countries. There have actually been more than 100 studies that have evaluated the effects of soy and isoflavones on brain function. Now, many of those studies are animal studies, but there also have been quite a few observational and clinical studies as well. Now, in 2014, Sony and colleagues published a very nice comprehensive review that concluded as follows: the evidence to date is not sufficient to make recommendations about the association between dietary intake of soy isoflavones and cognition in older adults. In other words, the data weren't indicating that soy enhanced cognitive function or impaired cognitive function. And I was very content to accept that recommendation and to move on to focusing on other areas related to soy that offered more promise. However, subsequent to the publication of this analysis, several studies were published that made me think soy, in fact, may improve cognitive function. One of those studies was a 2018 publication from Taiwanese investigators, which found that soy-based foods were negatively associated with cognitive function decline among Taiwanese elderly. In other words, the greater the soy consumption, the less likely it was for an individual to suffer from cognitive decline. So let's take a brief look at this study. It involved over 1,000 men and women over the age of 65, so older individuals. The men and women divided into 3 categories according to the amount of soy they consumed: no soy, less than 1 serving per day, and at least 1 serving per day. So there was a nice range of intake among this cohort. And we'll see next the adjusted odds ratio. So the odds ratio were adjusted for multiple potentially confounding variables. And here we see quite clearly, as soy intake increased, risk of cognitive impairment decreased. In fact, risk was decreased by more than 50%, and that finding was very statistically significant. Now, before moving on to the clinical trials, I do want to mention a word or two about the relationship between dietary fat and cognitive function. This is a very, very intriguing area. And again, there's some research suggesting that soy foods may be beneficial because of their fatty acid content. Here we have a systematic review and meta-analysis that was published last year involving 9 studies and 23,000 participants. So it was quite a large database. The results showed that compared with the lowest category of consumption, the highest category of saturated fat intake was associated with an increased risk of cognitive impairment, about a 40% increased risk, and a nearly 2-fold increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Both of these findings were statistically significant. In contrast to saturated fat, unsaturated fat intake was unrelated to risk. And of course, as I'm sure most of you recognized, soybean oil and the fat in soy foods and in soybeans is predominantly unsaturated fat. Almost 90% of the fat in soybean oil is unsaturated. So if you replace foods high in saturated fat with soy foods, you may end up decreasing your risk of cognitive function. Now, of course, if we're going to make any definitive or meaningful conclusions about the relationship between soy and cognitive function, or any outcome for that matter, we really have to base our conclusions on the clinical trial data and also systematic reviews and meta-analyses of the clinical data. The first meta-analysis that I'm aware of that was published, or that examined the effects of soy and cognitive function, was published in 2015, involved 10 trials, 1,000 postmenopausal women. Trials last 6 to 30 weeks in duration. The meta-analysis found that soy isoflavone supplementation seems to have a positive effect on improving summary cognitive function and visual memory in postmenopausal women. 1 year later, an Australian trial was published that found there was evidence of improvement in reaction time and reasoning speed in response to soy protein isolate. Soy protein isolate is about 90% soy protein. Reasoning speed refers to the ability to make reasoned decisions concerning distal relationships between stimuli. And reaction time is the speed at which one can respond using a computer keyboard to changes displayed on the monitor. This is a very well done study, 46 men and women between the ages of 45 and 75. The study utilized a crossover design, 8 weeks per treatment. So half of the subjects consumed soy protein, 50 grams per day for 8 weeks, half whey protein. There was then a washout period, and the participants then consumed for another 8 weeks the opposite protein. And here we have the results sub-analyzed according to gender. The higher the change means there was an improvement. Now, interestingly, what we see is that there's no difference between whey and soy among men, but among women, there was actually a decrease in response to whey protein consumption, whereas it was a statistically significant increase in response to soy. So an improvement in reasoning speed. We see a similar situation with reaction time. No difference among men between whey and soy. However, among women, a small decrease, impairment in change in reaction time among those who were consuming whey or when they were consuming whey. In contrast, when soy was consumed, there was an improvement in reaction time. Now, I don't want to give the impression that soy doesn't improve cognitive function in men, because here we have a 2009 study that found isoflavone supplementation in healthy males may enhance cognitive function. This study was quite small, 34 men, average age 49 years. Again, a crossover design, 6 weeks per treatment, used a much larger dose of isoflavones than in the previous study, 116 milligrams per day versus placebo. That's about 4 or 5 servings of soy, so that's a very high end of the dietary range. And then finally, we have what I consider to be the most definitive data, a meta-analysis published earlier this year. It involves 16 randomized clinical trials, almost 1,400 participants. Now, as you can see quite clearly, most of the participants were postmenopausal women, which is not surprising, but there were 107 men in this meta-analysis. The mean age was 60 years. The meta-analysis found that there was support for the potential of isoflavones to reduce risk of cognitive decline and dementia. So it's a pretty definitive statement. And isoflavones can be considered as a component of future dietary interventions for cognitive decline and dementia. I just want to take a little bit more detailed look at this meta-analysis because it's such a critically important contribution to the literature. One of the findings I want to point out is that it looks like isoflavones were more effective in younger postmenopausal women. So if isoflavones were consumed in women below the age of 60, so basically between the ages of 50 and 60, it looked like isoflavones were more efficacious. And that finding actually fits with what we know about other estrogen-like compounds. Also, although in general there was an improvement in cognitive function, when you look with more detail at the data, you see that the domain that was most improved was memory. So just to sum up things, although definitive conclusions cannot be made, recent data suggests soy exerts cognitive benefits in postmenopausal women and possibly men. Now let's move on to skin wrinkling, which unfortunately most of us are all too personally familiar with, but it's a natural phenomenon due to a variety of degenerative, environmental, genetic, and hormonal influences. There are absolutely some very intriguing preliminary clinical data suggesting that isoflavones improve skin health and specifically reduce wrinkles. Now, I became interested in this area of research in 2014 with the publication by Jenkins of a clinical study which found that a combination of isoflavones, omega-3 fatty acids, lycopene, vitamin C, and E, when consumed for 14 weeks, significantly reduced the depth of facial wrinkles. Let's take a brief look at this study. It was a very large study, 159 postmenopausal women, 14-week intervention, and the primary outcome was the change in the crow's feet wrinkle depth. The crow's feet refers to the wrinkles around the corner of the eye. In very abbreviated form, the results showed that there was a statistically significant decrease in wrinkles. The average decrease was about 10%. Now, the greater or the more wrinkles a woman had at baseline, the more likely she was to benefit, and the more likely the benefit was greater. And wrinkles were reduced because there was an increase in collagen synthesis. And that's a very important point. Collagen, as I'm sure most of you recognize, is the most abundant protein in the body. It forms a scaffold to provide strength and structure in many tissues, but especially in the skin. Unfortunately, with age, collagen synthesis decreases, and as a result, wrinkles can develop. Now, of course, one of the weaknesses to this study design is that the intervention consisted of a cocktail of bioactive ingredients, isoflavones, a carotenoid, antioxidants, vitamin C and E, and omega-3 fatty acids. So how do we really know that isoflavones contributed to the effects that we just saw, the reduction in wrinkles? Well, we have a pretty good idea that isoflavones were primarily responsible for this effect, because unless you're deficient in these nutrients, they don't affect collagen synthesis. In contrast, isoflavones actually added to this mix specifically because of their effect on collagen. Also, when this research was presented at a scientific meeting several years ago, the investigators indicated that when isoflavones were removed from the preparation, the benefits were lost. Now, that hasn't been stated in a peer-reviewed journal, but it was a comment made at a scientific symposium. Here we have a study from 2018, daily intake of fermented soy milk as well as unfermented soy milk, the traditional way of making soy milk, improves skin condition via increased levels of isoflavone absorption. So let's take a look at this study. 8 weeks, 57 postmenopausal women. The women consumed either 200 milliliters per day of fermented soy milk or unfermented soy milk. Each of the soy milk provided about 40 milligrams of isoflavones. Efficacy was determined by a facial questionnaire, facial skin questionnaire, and by also taking a biopsy of the skin. Not surprisingly, during the 8 weeks from week 0 to week 8 that the soy milk was consumed, urinary isoflavone levels increased quite markedly. Upon discontinuation of the milk consumption, isoflavones returned to their baseline urinary values. Here we have the results of the facial skin questionnaire, and there are a lot of numbers here, so I'll just summarize for you. Basically, with only one small exception, there was an improvement in skin health as judged by the participants themselves, both in response to the unfermented soy milk and the fermented soy milk. When soy milk was discontinued, the values began to return to their baseline levels. Now, of course, this is a subjective determination. There was no actual placebo or control product used in this study. However, as I mentioned, there was also an objective determination of efficacy, and this was the biopsy of the skin taken from under the forearm. And here we see as the score increases, it means there was an improvement in skin health. And when you go from week 0 to week 8, both in response to conventional soy milk and fermented soy milk, there was a statistically significant improvement. So these results are extremely encouraging. Now in total, there have actually been about 8 studies, the couple that I've shown, plus the several others. And collectively, these data suggest that isoflavones reduced wrinkles. All of these studies have some design limitations, perhaps small sample size, maybe a lack of a control group, but collectively they are very encouraging. And they were certainly encouraging enough for the United Soybean Board to fund a 2-year clinical trial to the tune of about $400,000. The primary endpoint is wrinkles. And the intervention will be an isoflavone-rich soy protein. So I'm very optimistic that this trial will provide sufficiently robust data, so we're going to be able to make some very definitive statements about the ability of soy to reduce wrinkles. And there's one other point that I want to emphasize about soy and skin health, and that has to do with an understanding of the mechanism how isoflavones may work. So how do isoflavones improve skin health? Well, of course, we don't know for certain, but we have a pretty decent understanding of at least the possibility of how they're working. And this is a point I made earlier in the presentation, that isoflavones preferentially bind to and activate estrogen receptor beta in comparison with estrogen receptor alpha. Now, some of you may already know this, but estrogen receptor alpha, the original estrogen receptor, was discovered in 1958, identified in 1958. Much more recently, 1996, estrogen receptor beta was identified. Now, estrogen binds with equal affinity to each of those receptors. In contrast, isoflavones prefer estrogen receptor beta. Now, why is that important? Why is it important, especially in relation to skin health? It's important in relation to skin health because estrogen receptor beta and not estrogen receptor alpha is the main mediator of estrogen action in the skin. So molecules that target estrogen receptor beta have a really good chance of improving skin health. And in fact, that's what this review stated almost exactly. Estrogen receptor beta is a novel therapeutic target for the prevention and treatment of photoaging. So I'm very optimistic about this area of research. Next, liver fat, just a few minutes, and then we'll get to the protein leverage hypothesis. Unfortunately, there's really an epidemic of liver fat. There are a number of conditions related to the accumulation of liver fat. You have fatty liver, then NASH, and even cirrhosis. The prevalence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is as high as 24% across the world. And that's because of the obesity epidemic that we're in the midst of. If you're obese, you're more likely to have a fatty liver. That cirrhosis can even increase risk for cancer, and a fatty liver can increase risk for diabetes. So it's a very serious condition. Now, there may be an impact on the type of fat on whether one develops fatty liver, not just whether one becomes obese. So here we have a study published in 2018 that found decreased intakes of saturated fat could be beneficial in reducing liver fat and the associated risk of diabetes. So let's take a quick look at this study. 38 overweight men and women. The diets were consumed for 3 weeks. This was an overfeeding study, so they actually consumed about 1,000 more calories each day than they needed for that 3-week period. One diet was high in saturated fat, one diet was low in saturated fat, high in unsaturated fat, primarily monounsaturated fat, and then a third diet was high in simple sugars. And here we have the results for the 38 overweight men and women, and we're looking at the percent increase in liver fat. Now, all 3 diets increased liver fat accumulation, which isn't surprising because it was an overfeeding study. But you can see that saturated fat increased liver fat accumulation by 55%, unsaturated fat by only 15%. And the difference between the 2 diets was statistically significant. Now, this unsaturated fat diet, as I indicated, was mostly monounsaturated fat. Here we have a study that compared saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat. And it found saturated fat markedly induces liver fat, whereas dietary polyunsaturated fat prevents liver fat accumulation. So we see even more robust results when you compare saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat. So this was an 8-week study, again, overweight or obese men and women. Overfeeding studies, the goal was a 3% weight gain over the 8-week period. The muffins were the vehicle by which the different types of fat were added. The 40 grams per day, so almost 400 calories of fat in the form of muffins. They were the high in polyunsaturated fat or high in saturated fat. Now, what's interesting here is in response to saturated fat, like in the previous study, you see a statistically significant increase. In contrast, in response to polyunsaturated fat, you not only don't see an increase, you actually see a small decrease. So the point here, like a previous point with cognition, is that if you're going to replace saturated fat in your diet with polyunsaturated fat, you're going to perhaps reduce your risk of developing liver fat. And as has already been pointed out, soybean oil, of course, is predominantly unsaturated fat and predominantly polyunsaturated fat. And then finally, just a couple of words about the protein leverage hypothesis. I've really become intrigued by this hypothesis over the past several months. This hypothesis was first proposed in 2005, so it's quite old, but over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of support published for this hypothesis. And briefly stated, the hypothesis maintains that because of the body's strong propensity to regulate the amount of protein eaten, humans are at risk of obesity when the proportion of protein in the diet falls as a result of the dilution in the food supply by calories derived from non-protein sources such as fats and carbohydrate. In other words, if you're not getting enough protein in your diet, you're going to continue to eat more calories, consume more calories in order to make sure that you're meeting your protein requirements. I bring up the protein leverage hypothesis to just illustrate and emphasize that soybeans are higher in protein than all of the other commonly consumed legumes. And these data are percent calories from protein. You can see soybeans are about 38% protein. Most of the other legumes are in the mid-20s. And not surprisingly, all of the traditional soy foods and foods made with the soy protein ingredients like isolated soy protein and soy protein concentrate are very high in protein. They get anywhere from 25 to 45% of their calories from protein. So in summary, isoflavones may improve cognition and skin health. The low saturated fat content of soy foods may help to prevent cognitive function decline. The high polyunsaturated fat content of soybeans may prevent liver fat accumulation, and the high protein content of soy foods may help to prevent obesity. So soy foods have a lot going for it. They have multiple components that may independently exert a number of health benefits, and collectively, I think it's very clear that soy foods warrant an important role in overall healthy diets. So I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
What I will present in this symposium have been presented by Dr. Mark Messina. So I can omit some of my slides. Okay. Okay, this is what I will present now. Some of slides have been omitted. Okay, let's see soy food products in Indonesian diets. So soy food products are very important, especially for most Indonesian people in diet, and especially for vegetarian and vegan too, because they are rich with beneficial nutrients, as we saw before. Asian people consume about 20 to 80 grams per day soy products in form of non-fermented, like soy milk, tofu, soybean sprout, toasted soy protein flours, energy bar, the newcomer, and mostly in fermented, like tempe, soy sauce, tocho, miso, natto, soy paste, and tempe chips. And it is equivalent with 25 to 100 milligrams total isoflavones and 8 to 50 grams soy protein. Meanwhile, Western people only consume about 1 to 3 grams per day soy product, as mentioned by Dr. Messina, mostly in form soy drink, breakfast cereal, and soy burger. But recently, they are starting consuming fermented products too, like tempe and texturized vegetable product. Actually, Indonesia know many new products from soybean during 20 years. The products mostly, Indonesia is the largest tempe country producer, 60 to 70% for tempe, and 30% for tofu, and 10% for others, yeah? Mostly in tempe and tofu. And this is based on Hardinsa. Tempe, they are about 69% or 60 or 70% of household consume soy product in form of tempe, and 63.72% in form of tofu, and 42.5% in soy sauce. The others only less than 3%. And about research on soy food in Indonesia, despite there are very little new food products from soybean in Indonesia market, There are many studies indeed conducted on the relationship between soy-based product and health beneficials as well as new product development. Researches mostly on tempe and tempe derivatives and soy flour, like tempe as whole, tempe flour, tempe drink, isoflavone of tempe, weaning food, cookies, biscuit, energy bar for diabetic, liquid food for diabetic, and soy flour as ingredient. We add on noodle, meatball, flake, instant analog rice, snack, composite flour, chocolate, kerupuk, nugget, soy flour or rice analog, and soy-based formula. The others, research on soy milk and fermented soy milk is most, yeah? And very little on okara, onigiri, and soy cheese. Yeah? The result of those research supported and confirmed previous studies regarding the health benefits of soy food as presented by Dr. Mark Messina just recently. However, there's some new findings from researchers in Indonesia. For example, tempe products may be used to cure and prevent the incidence of diarrhea during supplementary feeding. Tempe flour may prevent or reduce the incidence of dementia if consumed in adequate amount, like mentioned by Dr. Mark Messina too. Tempe drink may repair the muscle damage after intensive training. Tempe-based products are suitable for diabetic people as low glycemic index food. Liquid food from tempe may be used in nutrition care of diabetic people in hospital, and soy milk and tempe could be used to lowering blood pressure. For example, this is the study of our student with Professor Dinsa, demonstrated that consumption of tempe flour is able to prevent from dementia and improve the cognitive function of aged women. Tempe drink, this our research with Jauhari, indicated that tempe drink may recover muscle damage on athletes after intensive training. The high content of branched chain amino acid in tempe could play important role in this phenomenon. Previous research, Sulaeman et al. Indicated tempe drink was able to reduce the growth of Escherichia coli, and therefore this drink may prevent diarrhea on children under 5. Research of Aitonam et al., also our student, that liquid food from tempe is a good food for diabetic people. This is new innovation, energy bar from tempe and sago for diabetic people. Yeah. Now let's see the opportunity and challenges of soy food industry in Indonesia. Despite the health benefits of soy-based products, the type of soy product as well as the number of soy food producers in Indonesia are still limited. The main products in Indonesia are still limited to tempe, tofu, and soy sauce. The amount of consumption of this product are quite high, like mentioned before. The number of soy milk producers in Indonesia is still limited and mostly a small-scale industry. And compared to other Asian countries, the soy milk consumption in Indonesia is still very low, though there is increased trend. However, most of soy milk sold in supermarkets are dominated by imported products, especially from Thailand and Vietnam. The low consumption of soy milk in Indonesia, perhaps there is still misperception regarding soy milk, such as soy milk only for women and soy milk is identical with poor. Let's see the soy food and beverage market trend in Indonesia. We know that close to half population in Indonesia under age 35. And there is diet modernization away from traditional practices, and social media and e-commerce changing purchasing habits and food choices. And there are like tempe revitalization and undergoing quality upgrade to move into modern era. And Dr. Dadi will discuss later. And then soy snack food and soy beverage are gaining market share starting. Yeah? And health awareness increasing to meet with lifestyle changes. That's the phenomenon in Indonesian consumer. So the healthy lifestyle trend in Indonesia like this, they try to find food that meet these three categories: healthy, affordable, and convenient. And soy beverage is the choice, yeah, one of choice. And this is the top 5 trigger to consume soy beverage in Indonesia. So still still low in Indonesia, but there's like a trigger. For example, 62% mention that it is good source of protein, 40% mention it's low in fat, 36% made with organic soybean, 34% no cholesterol, 34% contain calcium, 26% flavorful, 20% prevent osteoporosis, 20% lactose-free, and 9% promote weight loss. And there's spaces for potential soy-based product like this. Yeah? So you can see here for enhancement, yeah? Building strength, showing lifestyle, and showing status, wealth, and aspiration like this. So the kind of soy drink is different here, and also copying here like soy ice cream, soy pudding, soy yogurt, and soy fruit milks. This is actually the opportunity, yeah, to market or to produce various kind of soy drink in Indonesia. What is the opportunity and challenges of soy food industry? Also, there are many scientific data indicating soy foods have many health benefits. There are challenges in putting such claims in the label of the product in Indonesia. In Indonesia, to put health claims on a product, we need to conduct clinical trials according to the National Agency for Drug and Food Control protocol. Most of soy milk produced in Indonesia, small-scale industry or even household industrial scale with very simple machine or equipment, with low sanitation and hygiene quality, very limited time shelf life, under-standardized quality, and simple distribution system, like from home to home. Yeah? Of course, they need to improve the quality and food safety measure, as there is new regulation regarding the food registration. Before we can register this kind of product according to PRRT, yes, household small scale industry, but now should be MD, registered as MD. So it is why then it is what triggered us to establish Soybean Indonesia. Due to the fact that soy-based products may provide many health benefits and the big market opportunity for soy products in Indonesia, on February 2019, the participant of Soy Food Workshop recommended to establish an organization or a network to help in developing soy-based products and increasing the quality and safety of Indonesia soy food and beverage. This recommendation was followed by an FGD, which resulted in a declaration of Indonesia Soy Food and Beverage Network, or Soybean Indonesia, on March 21st, 2019 in IPB International Content Center, Bogor. This network was officially launched on August 3, 2019 at Shangri-La Hotel, which was witnessed by all related stakeholders, more than 300, soy food and beverage producers, importers, soy farmers, academicians, and researchers. And this is the mission and vision and mission. Yeah. So, and mission this is to support the improvement of Indonesian human resources quality through balanced diet, where soy food included, to support the innovation and research and efforts to improve the food safety, quality, and health benefits of soy-based food and beverage, to support the development of soy food and beverage industries in Indonesia, to bridge the research activity and dissemination of the research among university, research institute, industries, and other stakeholders. And this is the program of Soybean Indonesia, and these are some of our activities. Also, we just less than 1 year, we have already conducted many activities like participate in Asian Congress of Nutrition. Also, we went to the US to participate in Global Trade Exchange in Chicago, Illinois, USA, and seminar on soy drink for small-scale industries in collaborated with United Chemical in Hotel Pullman, visiting Jukajo, small-scale soy beverage industry in Tangerang, and then also we conduct soy beverage spiritual workshop for value-added soy product like this, and also we have virtual in-house training for 3 companies. And then also we participate in Pan Asia Soy Food Symposium and Exhibition 2020. This is our panel. Yeah? And then we conducted 4 training, 4 Soybean is a series of training. Yeah? virtual training. We have 4 kinds of training. Yeah. And we also have a soy beverage workshop. And in conclusion, there are challenges and opportunities to develop new product of soybean in Indonesia. The big change is for soy drink. Many studies on product development of soy-based product have been done. However, the inventions are still invention, still far to become innovation. Studies on the health benefits of main soy food products confirm the finding previous studies as reported by Messina. Soy-based food producers need support and technical aids to improve quality of their product as well as to diversify their products. Soybean Indonesia was established to accelerate the growth of soy food industry in Indonesia. Thank you.
So for many Indonesia, we all know about tempe, but for non-Indonesian, maybe I would like to explain what is tempe. Tempe is a fermented product made from soybean that have been soaked and cooked to the soften them. To become a tempe, it's require a starter substance. We call it ragi, which is added to the cooked beans. And then the fermentation time take times about 36 to 48 hours. And the result is a firm texturized product with somewhat nutty flavor and a texture similar to a chewy mushroom. So tempe is different with natto or with other fermented product. It is firm and it can be formed into a patty. It is used as a substitute for animal product in what in the West is typically called as mock, burger or sandwiches. So as mentioned by Dr. Mahen, tempe is very ideal for those who choose vegetarian diet. Tempe has the necessary characteristic of a dietary staple in that is high in protein and fiber and is rich in other nutrients. It is also the advantages of containing vitamin B12. Tempe is the only plant-based protein that rich in vitamin B12. So this is the tempe making process. So first, washing and soaking. There are 2-step fermentation in making tempe. The first fermentation involving lactic acid bacteria. So during soaking, it will involve the lactic acid bacteria. And then after breaking, dehull the peel the skin, and then cooking again. And then inoculation. This is the involvement of the principal fermentation by Rhizopus oligosporus. So like this. And then after that, packaging and incubation for about 24 to 36 hours. So in total, from bean to become tempe, it's required about 48 hours. So what is the role of microorganism in the tempe production? So tempe is the result of the mixed culture fermentation by a diverse group of microorganisms, including molds, yeast, lactic acid bacteria, and different gram-negative bacteria. However, Rhizopus oligosporus is the dominant tempe fungus. Although other molds such as Rhizopus oryzae and Mucor spp might also contribute to the flavor, texture, or nutritive value. So this is old article by Lim et al. In 1977, first reported that Klebsiella pneumoniae was responsible for the production of vitamin B12 in commercial tempe. And Rhizopus mold produce natural head-stable antibiotic agents against some disease-causing organism. So because this fermentation process from soybean to tempe, it is kind of nutrient booster. So the study show that tempe making process further improve nutrient content of nutrition nutritious soybean. So compared to soybean, tempeh has more calcium, vitamin B12, B3, B6, and vitamin B12. So due to these advantages of nutrition and non-nutrition component on tempeh, tempeh is recognized as a functional food. Even tempeh is recognized one of the superfood. There are very small food categorized as a superfood, and we have to proud tempeh become one of them, recognized as a superfood. So I would like to talk about tempeh as intangible culture of heritage of Indonesia. So tempeh is part of Indonesian diet since a long time ago. It is produced and consumed since 16th centuries, around 14 years by Japanese, as mentioned in Serat Centini. Serat Centini is an old manuscript. So for Indonesian, especially for Jawa, for Javanese people, tempeh is not only used as daily food, but also as an important element of many family. That's why it is, if we are talking about tempeh for Japanese people, it's not only food, but there is a cultural aspect attached on that. Because of that, so tempeh recognized by the government of Indonesia to become intangible cultural heritage by the Ministry of Culture and Education in 2017. Where this here, Professor Hardinsah with Pergizi Pangan, we really play important role in getting this acknowledged. So this is about tempeh production in Indonesia. So tempeh in Indonesia produced by small medium enterprise. So it is produced by small scale industry. Daily production is ranging from 50 to 100 kg. So the main market of fresh tempeh is in traditional market. Due to produced by small medium enterprise, there are many challenges of tempeh industry in Indonesia, especially on food safety and hygienic. That's why there are collaborative effort for tempeh improvement is needed. I would like to share with you what we have done to improve tempeh industry in Indonesia. So this is the highlight of the collaboration between USEC, United Soybean Export Council, and Indonesia tempeh stakeholder in Indonesia. The main goal is to improve the tempeh industry in Indonesia. The target audience is tempeh producer, of course, the main target audience, and then the key opinion leader, general customer, and other stakeholder. So this is the some of the highlight. We conduct training and education, mostly on the application of good hygienic practice in tempeh production, because the main problem in the tempeh production is on food safety and hygiene. We develop a module that can be applied and easily understand by the tempeh producer. And then we also established tempeh pilot production facilities, and we call it Rumah Tempe Indonesia. Up to now, we have several tempeh, more than 20 tempeh production plan in Indonesia that we developed since 2012 to 2020. So this production plan is served as a learning center, not only for the tempeh producer, but also for the general population who want to learn about how to make tempeh. We also develop the communication and education material to educate people. And we also have a database of tempeh hygienic producer in Indonesia, because we already educate the tempeh producer, and as an appreciation, we put them in a database. So it will help them to market the product. We also develop a Tempe Land. This is an edutainment center. Unfortunately, due to this COVID situation, this facility is closed. However, we still conduct the education virtually. So the aim of this edutainment center is to disseminate tempeh as Indonesian heritage to especially to the young generation. So this is the Tempe Land activity. So we we bring the kids there, and then the kids will make tempe, and then we also educate the nutrition value of tempe, as well as the cultural aspect of tempe. So as the conclusion, currently the main material of tempe is soybean. However, the local production of soybean is not enough to fulfill the need. That's why most of the soybean in Indonesia is coming from US. US soybean industry help the improvement of tempe industry in Indonesia. So continued supply of US soybean in Indonesia in absence of reliable supply of local soybean is important for two reasons at least. First, it helps secure jobs and income for more than 150,000 households involved in the tempe and tofu production. It also helps preserve one of Indonesian intangible cultural heritage. The practice of consuming or making tempe has been around since 16th centuries. As a conclusion, tempe has contributed positively to the fulfillment of nutrition and economic empowerment of Indonesian society. Despite of its positive contribution, there are many challenges that need to be improved, especially related to production, market access, product development, and innovation. That's why a collaborative effort is required to upgrade and improve tempe industry in Indonesia. And we are proud that Pergizi Pangan, as one of the prominent health professional organization in Indonesia, really concerned in this, and we have Pergizi Pangan is really involved in many of activity to improve tempe industry in Indonesia. And then national awareness should be raised to promote tempe and tempe processed product as the flagship product of Indonesian nation. Tempe and its processed product have the potential to become Indonesia flagship product for export to various parts of the world. So tempe from Indonesia for the world. Please support tempe as Indonesian intangible cultural heritage. Thank you very much. I give the time to the moderators.